Speaking of teams coming up with big wins, the Oklahoma Sooners pulled one off against the Texas Longhorns. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Are free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oklahoma Sooners got a big win down in Austin, Texas against the Texas Longhorns, 76-72. We talked about some coaches that coached themselves off the hot seat in the 2024 college football season. Well, Porter Moser did the same thing over the last 2.5 weeks, helping Oklahoma go 3-2 in their final 5 games and getting a big win over Texas. This without Sam Godwin. This with Jeremiah Fears and Jalon Moore shooting a combined 4 for 21. But 6 Sooners were in double figures, led by Bryson Goodine, Jay. It was a complete team effort when your stars really didn't have their best days.
The thing that you've been looking for from this team this entire season is get more games like this where, yes, Jeremiah Fears is going to be a lottery pick. Yeah, he's basically locked in for that. And he's going to have bad games because teams are going to throw everything at him like the kitchen sink in order to try to get him off his game. Well, him and Jalon Moore struggled, but everybody else picked up the slack. I mean, they were 0 for 7 from 3 in this game, but then everybody else was hitting threes. They had 8 for 17 from three-pointer outside of what Jalon Moore and Jeremiah Fears was able to put up. And so that's what you've been needing, John. Mm-hmm. We've been needing to see that in Porter Moser getting everybody else jumping off. But I mean, I guess the good thing for the Sooners is that Chicago State job is open right now. And that has been a running joke on the social medias over the last few weeks that, Chicago State job opens up and Porter Moser immediately runs for it. Well, he's making himself a nice little plea for the job because he gets into the tournament and he makes a small run. He may be like, look, I'm going to go ahead and take that job and let the Sooners go ahead and figure out the rest of it themselves. I don't know. Or he may come back another year. He may be given another year. But I'll say this. If we get more out of the reserves the way that we got in this game, I can't complain about Porter Moser as much.
Well, here's the thing. We said in order to keep your job, you got to make the tournament. They're going to make the tournament. Yeah. ESPN upped their chances to make the tournament to 72% after the last week where they beat Missouri and they beat Texas. So I think they're going to be in. Whatever happens in the SEC tournament, I think is irrelevant. If they go win a game or two, I think it's going to help their seeding, but I don't think it's going to have them in or out of the tournament. I think they're in. Joe Lunardi of ESPN has them as one of their last 4 in. So to me, they're in.
Yeah.
I think the job that he did in this game where Jeremiah Fears and Jalon Moore didn't have their best nights. You got Glenn Taylor with 10 points, Luke Northweather with 10 points. Duke Miles came up big down the stretch. He had 11 points. He had a big and one late in the game to really separate Oklahoma from Texas and pull away, gave them a 70-66 lead, and the Sooners were able to close it out. And I think that's the important thing. Like late games, okay, you had the losses to Kentucky and Ole Miss, bummer, but you were battling back and forth in the last few minutes in those games. It wasn't like, you had a lead and you gave it up like at the LSU game. You showed to be a lot better over the last couple of weeks in late game situations, and you did that against Missouri. You held on. They tried to come back in that game, but you didn't let them. And then against Texas, you just kept them a little bit at arm's reach and never allowed them to get into a situation where it was a one-possession ball game. You kept it 2 possessions over the final couple minutes and were able to get a big road win. Porter was able to get the Texas monkey off his back and break that 0-for streak that he has against the Longhorns. And listen, I was as critical as anybody out here about Porter Moser. I wrote an article for Sooners Wire saying they needed to make a change 2.5 weeks ago if they wanted to salvage their tournament hopes. And they didn't. And Porter Moser's got this team playing really good basketball, fighting really hard. And again, when their best players weren't at their best, Oklahoma was still able to pick up a win. And I think
shows you how good of a team they have, John. That's the thing that bothers me about this season. Why didn't we get more of that?
Yeah, I don't know.
What do we have to do in order to get more of just all-around ball play? I mean, this is what we saw in non-con. Like literally in non-conference scheduling, this is what you saw. You saw Jeremiah Fears show out, but you also saw other players contribute. And then when Jeremiah was kind of down, you start to see everybody else elevate. And I just don't, I truly do not understand why we can't see more of this. Because that to me is what is, I think that's where Porter Moser's strength more so is in his coaching, is that he's been able to get a lot out of the rest of the roster. Like Goodine, he had what?
14.
How many games did he have this season? He's had what? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games this season in double figures. He had that 24-point breakout against Texas A&M, 34-point breakout. Actually, both games against Texas A&M. It seems like Texas A&M is the team that he enjoys, balling against. Yeah. But that's what we needed more of, right? And of course, the Kentucky game was a close game, which is what you hope for. And then he shows out against Texas. It's just, you need more of that, more consistency, more push, more plays drawn to get players like him open and going. That helps out, but
I think some of the thing that I saw, especially in that 5-game stretch where they went 0-5 and they played 4 ranked teams and then they lost to LSU in the middle of that. I just think you saw a team that was unsure of itself and lacked confidence. And when that happens and nobody's wanting to pull the trigger, it creates a struggle. Like everybody's waiting for somebody else to make a play, right? Well, over the last 5 games, I haven't seen that as much. I feel like it's been guys that are ready to make the play when the play is there. You have guys that are like, even Muhammad Wegi, like the dude will handle the ball down the court looking to make a play. Like people are trying to step up, make a play. Sam Godwin, I think he, like before he got hurt, he was playing his best basketball of the season. And it's because he was getting the ball and he was attacking the rim, on the pick and roll and finding backdoor cuts and making plays. It's guys were looking to step up and make plays. And I think that's the thing that switched from that 5-game losing streak to the final 5 games of the season, is that the team looks more confident and the team looks ready to make some plays. And that makes them dangerous going into the postseason. Like they've got a star in Jeremiah Fears, a guy that could go on one of these fabled tournament runs that we've seen in the past. They've got a star in Jalon Moore, who is as capable of filling it up as Jeremiah Fears is. They've got a good group of role players that are tough, that can play physical, that can defend, and they've got some guys that can hit threes. So this is a team that's got a chance to be one of those that could put it together, and they're battle tested. If they get the right bracket, there's no telling what they could do in the NCAA tournament with the way that they've been playing over the final 5 games.
Yeah, there's a really good chance that they could sneak a win. I don't know about 2 because there'll be a 12 seed, and so there's going to be a little bit of a challenge in that bracket to make their way down. I think right now they're slated to potentially play against Ohio State at for the 12th spot.
Plant the flag.
Plant the flag one more time, guys. Let's see if we can do that.
That's
but
right.
You win that game, you get Arizona and Seattle. Big yikes. Big yikes. But the ladies, they're going to host a regional, which is going to be amazing. Yeah. And we better go ahead and fill up Lloyd Noble for the ladies, because even though they fought hard against South Carolina, they didn't get the W. They'll be hosting some regional games, and I expect them to make a deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah, this is the best chance that the ladies have, I think, to make the Sweet 16. What happened last year, they just didn't have a presence inside that can get them continuous buckets or consistent buckets. Well, Reagan Beers can do that for them. They've got a deep, deep squad, a bunch of girls that can put a lot of points up, and they defend well, they rebound well. South Carolina is just a juggernaut. Like, that is the best program in the country over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and they beat everybody for the most part. So yeah, you played better this time than you did the last time where you got beat by 40 points. So I like where Oklahoma's heading into the tournament. But yeah, good opportunity to fill it up and support the women. We got a lot of great support for women's sports at Oklahoma. Softball had a big weekend that we didn't get to touch on, but we'll try to touch on that at some point in a future episode as well. They're playing good ball right now as well. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Also, go check out the Locked On College Basketball Podcast to get you ready for March Madness. Andy Patton and Isaac Shade are breaking down the bubble. They're breaking down all the tournament hopefuls. They'll break down the 68-team bracket when it's released, as well as all of the conference tournament action happening this week. So go check it out. Locked On College Basketball Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check him out on his YouTube channel as well. Unfair Sports. You can follow me at John9Williams, and you can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners, wherever you like to do your social media stuff. Go check us out. Go follow us there. And until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer.
Sooner. They better get in the tournament.
Oh, it's a lock, dude. Lock it up. It's locked up.